right. Well, good morning and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. We have an action-packed May on the go. In fact, this month was supposed to be a little bit quieter, but somehow I think we're almost up to 40 live events this month, which tends to happen because we can't resist really fun opportunities to connect live with scientists, explorers, adventurers, and conservationists from all over the world. So I've been looking forward to this event for a while because it's been on the books for at least, I would say, a month and a half. We are heading live into the field, and we're going to go beneath the surface of the ocean and into Jules Undersea Lodge. Now, this is really cool because there really is only two spots in the world where you can kind of go and stay underwater like this. One is the Aquarius Reef Base off the coast of Florida, and then we have the Jules Undersea Lodge. So today we're going to get to spend a little bit of time with our friend Adele Luta. So maybe some of you have met her in past events. She has joined us on multiple occasions. She's worked for NASA at the Johnson Space Flight Center as a certified mission control center flight controller and as an astronaut instructor where she supported over 90 spacewalks. She is currently an ex-EVA Exploration Spacewalks Integration Project Manager at Oceaneering International, Inc. And she's part of a team that's been developing a lunar lander for NASA's Artemis program, but now she's working mostly on a next generation spacesuit, which is really cool. And as if all that cool stuff isn't enough, she is also a pilot, a private pilot, and she's a scuba diver. So I'm not surprised at all that we're finding her underwater here right now. And then going on at the same lodge, some of you may have heard about Dr. Joseph Dituri. He is attempting to live underwater for 100 days in the lodge and learning all kinds of things about the human body. So lots going on under the water today. So I'm going to bring Adele in here live with us right now. Hey, Adele, how you doing?
Hi, I'm doing great. Oh my gosh, look at that.
Yeah,
Fish
you're getting bombed back there by some of the fish. Very cool. Photo bombed, video bombed.
You see the fish and not me. So that proves that I really am under the water. It's not just green light behind me. We are living and breathing, Joe and I, 22 feet under the ocean in Jules Undersea Lodge. We are in Florida, Key Largo, Florida. And I got here yesterday. Joe has been here. I believe tomorrow he breaks the record for consecutive days. And he's going to go till 100. Collecting, of course, the main thing is not the record, but the data collection he's collecting for science, awareness for conservation, and then as well all these sim events and talking to wonderful people like you guys who are going to hopefully one day be just like me under the ocean living. So yeah, I was able to come down and join him, and as mentioned, there's very much a similarity between living under the water as to being out in space, because it's what you call an extreme environment. So extreme environments mean that we need support, we need resources to help us live. Oh my gosh, it's just so cool, right? I feel like it's amazing. I almost did not want to go to sleep last night. I was like Christmas to me, just wanting to stay up and watch all the fish and the lobster and everything else. We get manatees and all kinds of things out here. This is their home. We're living in their home. And the other thing that's really funny is because the light is shining, they come and check us out. So we are the entertainment as well. So that's really fun. But extreme environments means that we need support to live. So we're not as lucky as living on the surface of Earth. We need air, we need removal of CO2 and contaminants. We need the right pressure, we need the right temperature. We can't be too hot or too cold. So all of those things, if you hear a humming around me, the habitat is keeping us alive. And the only way to get in it is to scuba dive in it. And so you do have to be a scuba diver. So that's a goal. If that's something you want to do is live underwater, that one of those first steps is being healthy, being a good swimmer. You can be a scuba diver and then you can come live under the water. So what's really cool is we have our dive computers here, and our dive computers follow a safety protocol that tells us, hey, you got to go to the surface because it thinks I'm actually scuba diving. So last night it was beeping at me saying, hey, you got to go to the surface. You got to go to the surface. But I didn't have to, because what I did is a saturation dive, which means my body right now is at an equilibrium state with the level I'm at in the ocean. So I'm going to show you a little bit of a tour later, show you our moon pool, our wet deck area, because that water and the atmosphere are balanced, which means my body has come to an equilibrium state to the water that is outside. So I can stay here. I can go scuba diving as much as I want, as much as I have air in a tank, and I don't have to necessarily follow the traditional diving tables while I'm here because I'm not going up to the surface every time I'm doing a dive. So a lot of important things though, and a lot of resources that we have to keep us alive. Very similar to being in space or being on the space station, or eventually being on the moon or being on Mars. All those resources, all those wonderful things we get for free, we don't necessarily get to keep all those things. We have to take them with us as we travel to these other extreme environments and these places. So we're learning down here. We're collecting data down here. It's part of a science and engineering experiment ongoing to make sure that we are safe when we go to these places that are further away, that we understand how our bodies react to them as well. And then we can compare. So Joe's going to compare some of his data to also the International Space Station astronauts that have been, and he may poke in and say hi. We've been doing a lot of talking in different classrooms. So he's actually talking to someone else right now, but we've done some joint ones. So if you want to learn more, see more about his mission as well, you can follow him at Dr. Deep Sea. And you can follow me if you'd like to continue to learn about me at Serenity Astro on Instagram. And I do a lot of posting and a lot of fun activities. So, but let me give you a little bit of a tour so you can see my bedroom, see where I slept last night. So this is my window. But if I show you, so there's two bunks there's like bunk beds. If you have bunks with brothers or sisters, there's two bunk beds. And I did bring down some of my gear. So I had different underwater cameras that I brought down that I was using to come in here. We have lots of fun pillows, fish pillows. And then we have Wi-Fi in the rooms, so we can bring our smartphones and our devices and our computers. But the joke is, if you come down here and Joe's here, you got to bring him some chocolate to get the Wi-Fi password. So it is pretty cool to have Wi-Fi. I'll go ahead and give you a little bit of a tour. It's going to get a little noisy as I go out here, but this is what we have to go through. These are connected hatches that connect each module. So we have 3 modules connected. And this right in here, that is our moon pool. So that is how we get in and out. And also in here is, let's see, that's our bathroom and our shower. So we do have the ability to rinse off when we come in for a dive. I'm going to close this real quick because it gets noisy. We do have the ability to rinse off when we come in for a dive, get that salt water off you. If you've been to the beach, that's really important. And then out here, there's probably, you can't see it, but there's a line that actually leads you all the way back. So if you have low visibility as safety, you can follow the line. You go through the moon pool, you can follow the line and go all the way back to the main dock area to get out of the water if needed. So yeah, it's cozy. It's not too small. It's not too big. It's, kind of a nice space. And we in the other main area, we have a small kitchen. So we can't have a stove. So we do have a microwave. We have a very small fridge, and we have kind of a group eating area, which is really important for people who are in these extreme environments or on expeditions, is to meals become really important to eat together. And then there's another window as well where you can watch all the fish out on that side. And then we do a lot of our computer work and streaming from that side. We can do it from this side as well, but there's a little bit more electronics and camera set up on that side. So yeah, it's a nice, cozy home. I'm so excited to be back. It's been really great. As Joe mentioned, my day job is that I work on designing spacesuits. So this is just a little fun spacesuit. But, to break down the parts of a spacesuit, we have this backpack, which is our life support system. So that has all those things that I was mentioning the habitat has to do. In order to have a spacesuit, we have to do the same thing. So we have tanks in here which hold oxygen. We have a system that removes the CO2. We have cooling, temperature, and pressure that all kind of gets regulated along with a whole bunch of sensors and a computer system to keep it all balanced. And then this part of the spacesuit that you wear is your pressure garment. And there's so much engineering that goes into this, because this is just not layers of clothing, but there's restrictions and sewn into the gloves into the arms, into the knees, so you can actually bend that part of the spacesuit when you're walking around, because that pressure is very high, which means in order for you to close your hands, move your elbow, you have to push against the spacesuit. So the people that design the pressure garments, it's a really cool thing. And they hire what's called textile workers that do the sewing, and some of them even have fashion degrees, right, to understand all of this. So it's really neat. We have helmet lights that we're working on, interfaces and computer systems so that the astronaut can be aware of what's happening on the life support system. And then especially for the moon, this is key, and it's going to be different from Mars, so there's so much work to be done, is the gloves and the boots. Because right now, when we do a spacewalk, we actually walk with our hands. We have to move. And you guys might have seen spacewalks on NASA or on TV, might have studied them. But in the future, we're going to be walking again with our feet. So that means we need better boots than what they had for Apollo. And so we're doing a lot of work to figure that out. And one of the quizzes I want you to answer me is, if you guys go hiking with your parents or you go outside, what do you think would be the best type of boot to wear if we were walking on the moon or Mars? Do you think it would be a gym shoe? You think it would be a hiking boot? Or maybe a flip-flop? What do you think? What do you think would be the best boots to wear if you were walking on the moon and walking on Mars? And so we're looking at all kinds of shoes on Earth to pull the best qualities together to design those shoes. So lots of fun there, lots of really important work. Again, just to be in the habitat, it's really interesting to be down here. I think, you can't get claustrophobic, so you do have to, it's not that small of a space, but you do have to stay calm. It's both a mental and a physical thing to be able to kind of stay calm. There's a lot of safety aspects here about, we have our gear always set up in case of an emergency. We have buddy systems. We all kind of know how to work together as a team, and that's really important for being down here. In case of an emergency, we have medical kits in case of an emergency, and we all have to be very careful, and that's very similar to space as well, because if you fall and you hurt yourself, you just can't have an ambulance. You have to scuba dive to come out. Someone has to take you out, or you have to try to come out yourself. So you don't want to cut yourself. You don't want to fall down. You have to be really careful. And the same is true of the astronauts on the space station as well. So lots of things to consider when you're living in an environment like this. For food, I get a lot of questions about food. What are we eating down here? So a lot of hydration, a lot of water to make sure, there is additional stressors on our bodies right now. Even though we look about the same, that pressure is being absorbed on our bodies. And so making sure that we stay very, very hydrated. Joe has found that he's had to increase his protein count. And so I've been very hungry as well. There's a whole biological system that's going on where, because you're in an increased oxygen atmosphere and you have an increased metabolic response that's happening, there's all these complicated mechanisms that's happening, and you get really hungry. So when you get hungry, it's important to eat. It's important to eat the right type of food. And so for yesterday, for lunch, I had a salad. For dinner, I had a really good sandwich and some dessert, which was fun, some cookies for dessert. And then today I'm going to have some beef stew for a late lunch. So, really making sure we're eating well down here. I'm trying to think of some other stuff to talk about. Well, one thing that's fun is, if you do follow me, I like to really make sure we get engagement. And you can see I'm wearing a fun t-shirt. But I also asked everybody, it's just a little bit of an aside, what would be fun to wear for leggings? And so last time I went down, I picked my own favorite leggings that I wore, and you might have your own favorite t-shirt or shoes or backpack. And this time I let everybody, you guys, pick what to wear. And so it was between stars and galaxies, it was between mermaids, and it was between Wonder Woman. And so everybody picked mermaids. Probably not be surprised. So I'm wearing mermaid leggings. And when I leave and scuba dive out from the habitat, I'll be wearing them as well. So I am a physicist. I loved math growing up. And for me, I just really loved science. But that doesn't mean I'm boring. It doesn't mean I don't like to have fun. It doesn't mean I like to do all kinds of things like working in the ocean and scuba diving. think really anything that interests you, anything that you're passionate about, go do it, whether it's a hobby or your job. And that's what life's all about. So, be safe, be knowledgeable, but just have fun with it. I think that's such a key thing. Joe, do you want to take any questions? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is your second time visiting, because I remember, I think was it last summer? I hope it wasn't 2 summers ago, because that means time is going really,
2 summers ago.
Time is going way too fast. And you were down there, and we did an event together. And I think one of the things that really students thought was pretty funny was that you had a pizza delivered that time.
We did. We had a pizza delivered. Yeah, and that has to come. Anything that comes down in the habitat has a pressurized case, these big black cases that have a seal on the outside, and they put everything in. And sometimes, like electronics, they put a second bag on, and then they seal it down, and then they're able to bring it down to us and open it up. But yeah, it's definitely quite a bit of work to get anything down here that should not get wet. I will say that.
All right, very cool. Well, before we start, some questions. So those who are tuning in via YouTube, use the chat sidebar and send us in some questions. Those who are in camera spots, we're going to come bug you in a second to get some of those questions. I've got a little Kahoot quiz here to see how well classrooms were paying attention. So let me share my screen here, and I'm going to put it up in a banner as well. So there we go, kahoot.it. PIN number is there, 831-2989. If you head over there to play the Kahoot. And then I'm also going to share my screen, because you might be able to hear the music in the background, but let's get it up on the screen here. So there's a few ways that you could join this Kahoot today. If you're lucky enough in your classroom to have one-to-one tech right at your desk, well, then you can log in with that information, kahoot.it, and the PIN number. If not, no big deal. Your teacher could put it at the front of the room, and you could shout out your answers to him or her. And then, of course, if you're tuning in from home, or maybe you've got a tablet or a phone, you can scan that QR code and it'll bring you right in. You can see we're getting lots of cool animal names being generated here. I'm keeping an eye out for some ocean ones. See if any slipped by me while I was talking. There's got to be some ocean ones in here somewhere. There's gator, but that's not really ocean. All right, we'll keep an eye out and see if we get some ocean action, but we're getting a lot of land animals this time around. Oh, the aquatic rooster. I guess that's kind of a water animal. We could say it's a saltwater rooster. Very cool. Well, while we wait to get a couple more classes in before we start the quiz, Adele, you got to dive with astronauts while they were training for spacewalks in like one of the world's largest pools. What was that like to be diving? I think you even dived a couple times in the spacesuit. What's it like to be underwater in a spacesuit?
Yeah, I mean, the underwater is very much similar to being in the International Space Station and doing the spacewalks outside, because we make them what's called neutrally buoyant. And therefore, that's a great training environment. So we have the Neutral Buoyancy Laboratory in Houston, Texas, which is where I live. I live in Houston. Normally, I'm not in Florida. And we have a lot of divers that dive around to provide as much a realistic experience as possible. The livable modules of the space station are the same size as they are in space. You can't live in them; they have holes in them. But for translation purposes, for worksite purposes, they are the exact same size. And the astronauts get in spacesuits that are for training, and they go in the water, and then they're able to basically do step by step what they have to do in space. And so that's just a perfect training environment for them. It takes about 6.5 hours to do the spacewalks we do for the International Space Station. It's a long time. They have water, but they don't have any food, so they're really hungry when they come out. I am very lucky. Back when I was an astronaut instructor, I was able to do 5 simulated walks, both on the space station and on the space shuttle, back when we were flying the space shuttle, and it was amazing, Joe. It was just amazing. Hard work for sure, but just amazing. So I encourage, if anybody's thinking about working with spacesuits or human spaceflight, do it, because it does not disappoint.
All right. Well, I saw a gentle lobster join here, so we have at least one saltwater creature here. So let's get this started. I see lots of questions coming in via the chat, so we're going to get to those soon. But let's get into our quiz. 20 seconds for each question, a little true and false, a little multiple choice. Let's see who comes out on top in 3, 2, 1. So our first question, how deep is Jules Undersea Lodge? Is it 10 feet, 15 feet, 22 feet, or 30 feet deep? How deep is the Jules Undersea Lodge? You've got 8 seconds to get the answer locked in. They're coming in fast and furious. I should add, the right answer is getting you points. And the quicker you get that right answer in, even more points will come your way. Overwhelmingly, we went with 22 feet. Good job, crew. That puts the Glad Pigeon in first place. We're going to jump into question number 2, a little true and false action. Living underwater is a great way to train for living in space. Is that true or is that false? Is living underwater a great way to train for living in space? More seconds to lock in an answer.
We got to get you down here, Joe.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No question. Oh, yeah, true. 100% true. Good job. I think we've talked about this in the past, Adele. We, a while back, hosted one of the Nemo missions that they do at the Aquarius Reef Base. And there was a NASA astronaut and an astronaut from the European Space Agency who were training down there, which was pretty cool. All right, our scoreboard. The Glad Pigeon is not letting go of that top spot. We're going to go with another true and false. When you do saturation diving, you can only do a couple of dives before you have to surface. Is that true or is that false? When you're doing saturation diving, you can only do a couple of dives before you have to come back to the surface. True or false? All right, a little more split on that one, but that is false. So Adele talked a little bit about how she's equalized and can go out there and really dive as much as you want, which I think is any diver's dream, to be able to just dive, not worry about your tables or your computer telling you when you have to come to the surface and take an interval. I think that's a pretty good gig to have, being able to dive as much as you want. All right. Glad Pigeon might run it. They might keep the lead. We have our final question. How many modules make up the Undersea Lodge? Was it 1, 2, 3, or 4 modules that make up Jules Undersea Lodge? So we peeked into at least 2. So how many make up the Undersea Lodge? All right, a little bit of a split, but most went with 3, which is what we learned today. We've got a podium here with, in third place, the polite piranha. In second place, we have the lively ferret. Or sorry, the lively ferret. No, lively, I was right. Never mind. And then the Glad Pigeon was able to hold on to that top spot. All right, let me come back from that screen share because I see lots of questions. I see faces ready to ask their questions as well. So let's get it going. And a shout out to Miss Hawkino's class in New Jersey. They were on camera, but they were having trouble, but I see them on YouTube now. So we're going to get their questions from there. So Mrs. Hedrick's class is joining us. Let me get rid of this banner. We don't want to see that anymore. Mrs. Hedrick's class, how are we doing today? Okay. Good stuff. All right. Who's got a question on deck for us?
Here. So does anything hurt, like your ears or anything, from the pressure of being underwater?
That's a great question. Our bodies are amazing and actually adjust very well to this pressure. Now, there are pressures that we can't survive, and there are suits that you have to go into really deep water, but our bodies actually do okay at this pressure. However, I did have to be able to clear my ears. So if you do the thing where you hold your nose and then you do some pressure and your ears pop, you have to be careful and be trained in it. But that's how part of the way you clear your ears as a diver. If I couldn't do that, then I wouldn't be in the habitat right now. So I did have to make sure I was healthy and hydrated and rested. And I did have to clear my ears to come into the habitat. So, but it doesn't hurt. My ears don't hurt. Nothing hurts. So I'm very lucky.
All right, let's squeeze in another one before we go to another question. I see lots of hands, so I don't think we'll have trouble finding one.
Is it hard to eat when if there's a lot of things distracting you down there? Is there like a lot of pressure down there distracting you while you're trying to eat?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, actually, you have to keep on schedule eating. You can't really skip meals because we talked about the increased metabolic pressure rate that you're under. And so that means you get really hungry if you miss your lunch or your dinner. So part of what Joe's doing is he's really keeping to that schedule to eat, and he's got to eat his full meal. So, you know, when your parents at home say, you have to eat everything on your plate, you have to finish your plate, he does. He's his own parent. He's got to eat everything so that he doesn't lose weight and he stays healthy. So it was fine for me to eat. I was super hungry because I dove in here and I've been excited. But yeah, when you're here for a long period of time, you do have to make sure you eat your meals.
All right. We're going to tuck you backstage for now, but we're going to try and come back to get some more. So speaking of staying on your schedule, Ms. Hawkino's crew in New Jersey are asking online, can you give us an example maybe of one of the experiments that, you know, Joe is doing over the period of time that he's underwater?
Yeah, so one of the things that I think is really cool is he's giving blood and he's looking at his telomeres, and his telomeres actually, that deals with aging. And he actually found that his telomeres are getting longer. So as you get older, your telomeres shorten, but his are getting longer, which means in some ways he's getting younger. And that's similar to what Scott Kelly, who stayed on orbit for a year, the same thing happened to him and his telomeres got longer. So it's interesting that we're already seeing, even with Joe just down here, the 72, I guess, I don't know when they pulled his blood, but, you know, 70 some or 60 some days, they were already seeing some of those aspects underwater as well. So, but he's collecting lots of different data. I think every day he's taking different measurements. The other thing he's trying to do is he's trying to work out, which is really important because you're in this restricted environment. You don't have a full gym. So he's doing a lot of resistance bands. I don't know if you guys know what resistance bands are, but he's doing resistance band exercises and obviously scuba diving. So that's great, but he has to make sure he stays in shape.
All right. Very cool. Okay. Cold water. Grade 6, 7s are hanging out with us here. There they are. Hey, 6, 7s.
ICB.
That is you. All right. Who's on deck? Who's got a question?
Good. Max?
Why do astronauts train underwater?
I missed the last part. Why do astronauts
Train underwater.
train underwater? Well, because it's what we call an analog, which means it's close enough to being in space that they can actually understand how to move around. And the neutral aspect of being underwater is very close to being in microgravity in space. And so what we try to do, I mean, it's similar to you guys. So, you know, when you are learning to do a sport, if you guys play t-ball before you play baseball or softball, you know, you take these steps to train, to get ready, to do everything. And being able to put the astronauts in a pool and practice there is a step to train to get ready to do the spacewalks on orbit. Did that answer your question? I hope it did.
Yes, thanks.
All right. You got another one on deck? Grade 6, 7s. I think we do.
Why don't we use technology to make a virtual reality space training session?
They do. Actually, that's a great question. So we do also have virtual reality to do the training, and that allows them to get another piece of it. But part of the training is not just what they see, but also the physical endurance they have to build to actually work in the spacesuit. So there's a little bit of it in the pool, then they put a virtual reality environment on and they can see aspects we can't replicate in the pool. So that's a great question because we bring a lot of things together to make that full picture to get them ready for space.
All right. Great questions to get us started. Very cool. Let's go back to YouTube. There's so many questions coming in from YouTube. I should shout out to some classes. Mrs. Dennison in Massachusetts. We've got Mrs. Tomic's class in Alaska. We've got Miss Jacobs in Massachusetts. No, I didn't say that one. Good. We've got a Vancouver class, Miss McAllister's class. So great to see lots of classrooms saying hi there. Let's see.
Shout out to all the Canada classes. You guys got an astronaut that's going to go on Artemis too. That is so exciting. So exciting.
It is pretty cool. So Miss Jacobs' crew, they're in Massachusetts, and they would like to know, when you were doing your training in the Neutral Buoyancy Lab, the huge pool, were you wearing an astronaut's helmet while you were doing that training for the spacesuit?
So when the astronauts are in the spacesuit, or when I wore the training spacesuit, you do wear a helmet. You wear a full spacesuit. You wear the gloves, everything I was showing you, except for the backpack. The only thing that's different is we don't have we have a shell of the backpack, but what we have what's called umbilical, which is a long set of cables that actually give the oxygen and remove the CO2 and give the power. And that's just because it would be really difficult to put everything in a backpack in the pool. It'd be very expensive, so it's easier to have an umbilical. But everything you wear is just a similar training spacesuit. So you do wear a helmet, so it's really neat.
All right. I'm going to bring Mr. B's third graders in here. How are we doing today, third grade?
Good.
All right. Let's get some question action going.
What is your favorite part of living underwater?
Oh, I mean, looking out the window. Absolutely.
I imagine a close second would be just strapping on that tank and going diving whenever you want.
Whenever you want. Cool. That's pretty amazing. I mean, if you want to go check out, I have some videos that are educational videos on my YouTube page. So AdeleLuta.com or Adele Luta, just you search that on YouTube. I have my own page and it breaks down technology that we need to go in these environments. So I talk about why do we need a tank? Why do we need a regulator? Why do we need a dive computer? Why do we need to wear a mask? All these things that have to come together to allow us to explore these extreme environments. And everybody had to design and all these teams to make a system that allows us to do that. So if you're interested in watching, they're about 1-minute videos. I really encourage you to go check them out.
All right. Third graders, let's get another question.
How did you come up with the designs for the spacesuit?
Yeah, it's challenging. We're still learning. But we're very lucky that we've had amazing teams of engineers and scientists before us that tried out designs. And so we've been able to build off of their designs to create some new designs. So we have new computer systems and new materials that we've been able to put into the spacesuit. And it is challenging. I will tell you, there is not necessarily a right or wrong answer. So, in school, sometimes when you're studying things, there's a right or wrong answer. But this is one thing I love. So as you get older and you get to go into these new fields and you get to try new things, there's not always a right or wrong answer. So the team gets together and sits down and says, I think this is what we want to design. And then we put what's called test subjects in the spacesuits. And we're doing this right now. There's actually a test being run in Houston today, right now. And we ask them their feedback and we ask them, how easy was it to see it, to move it, to touch it, to do things, and those tasks. And then all that data comes together and we analyze that data and then we pick the best design we can. So, yeah.
All right. Let's dive back to YouTube and take a few more questions there. We can't leave them out. There's so many good ones here. Okay. So let's start off with Mrs. Dennison's crew would like to know, they're a science class. What was the most interesting thing you saw swim by the window? Could be maybe this time or last time. What was the most interesting thing that swam by the window?
Well, what kind of freaked us out a little bit is there was this really big lobster that was crawling on the side of the habitat and then just started crawling across the window. And at first we were freaked out. We're like, oh my God, it's an alien. But then we're like, oh no, it's just a lobster. It's just a lobster. But it was really big. And so sometimes, you have to, okay, we're okay. We're okay. But that was really neat.
All right. So building on that, our class in Alaska wants to know, in either time that you were down, did you ever see a shark through the window?
So, I have seen lots of sharks diving. I've been able to dive many places all over the world. And, there's just, first of all, sharks are beautiful creatures to see. They're just beautiful. They're so serene. And, especially when you come down on a reef and they're there, they're just living. People think sometimes, well, not people, I'll just say it can be a misnomer that sharks are aggressive all the time. They're not. They're just living there. That's where they live. And a lot of times they're just swimming around and they're chilling. And you're the weird thing. You're the scary thing because you're this thing with all this gear and these bubbles coming out. And they're like, what is this? And so most of the time when sharks see you, they swim away very quickly. They don't want to be around you. They don't know what you are. You're very big. And so, a lot of times as a diver, you try to be really quiet. And, you don't want to touch anything. You don't want to interfere at all. And then sometimes the sharks will come back and then they'll be swimming around. But they're not looking for you. That's where they live. So There are particular sharks that you always want to be very cautious about. Obviously, there's times of the day when they are hungry and they're eating, and you want to be respectful of that time. But in general, you're coming into their world. So I always think it's a blessing when I get to see a shark. It's amazing. And no, I'm not scared. I'm usually just very respectful of their time and respectful of them being there. Joe, do you want to add anything? You're a diver too. All right. You've seen sharks.
There is nothing better than being in the water and seeing sharks. And you're exactly right. They, if they stick around and you get a few pictures and a few video clips, it's awesome. And one of my best experiences, I got to spend 6 hours on a little island called Bimini, 6 hours underwater over 2 days with the great hammerhead sharks. And they were curious. So they were all around and hanging out and smiling for the camera with their big toothy grins. So that was pretty awesome. Yeah, very cool. Okay, one more YouTube question, then we'll see if there's a couple more camera spots. So our group in Vancouver would like to know, how do you bring things like garbage back up to the surface?
That is a great question. Yes. So we have support divers here that come down, they bring us food, and then they take away the garbage. So we try to minimize anything we can for garbage wise. So if we can eat fresh fruits or vegetables, which minimizes trash, we try to do that. But yeah, they have to, everything that comes in also has to go out. So they pack the garbage up and they put it in one of those pressurized containers, seal it up, and then they have to take it up to the surface. So we're very aware of, anything that we're doing down here to make sure it's safe. There's a thing called off-gassing, which means that there can be materials that get introduced into our atmosphere here, and that just recirculates. And so we have to be really careful that, what we're opening or what we're bringing down here as well. Great question about the trash. Yeah.
All right. Let me come back in here. There we go. Let's see. Coldwater 67. Do you have one more question for us before we wrap up?
Yep.
Oh no.
You talk really loud for me because I got a lot of noise in the habitat. So
How is wearing a spacesuit underwater?
Louder, Ellie.
How is wearing a spacesuit underwater similar to wearing one in space?
how is wearing a spacesuit underwater? Yeah, so when you wear the spacesuit underwater, while it does get wet, it's still pressurized. So there's all this pressure inside the spacesuit that kind of fills it up. And that pressure is what is also experienced when they're on orbit. And so in that, it's very similar because the suit has this resistance to be able to, oh, did you guys see that? What was that? Did you see it behind my head?
Did something go by?
Yeah. Anyway, so the pressurized spacesuit, it's pressurized in the water and it's pressurized on orbit. And the difference is that when we go in the water, we go up in pressure, and we go in space, we go down in pressure. But that delta pressure, the difference between the two is the same. And that allows the astronauts to really train with moving the suit, closing their hands, and the things they need to do to actually move that suit when they're in space. So that's why it's such a great.
Oh, there's somebody by.
There's someone back there. Yeah.
Swimming by. So so anyway, so it's just a really great training environment because of the training space, the suits we have that can go in the pool that really help us to get where we need to be. So.
All right, great question. Okay, that's cool. It looks like a free divers. Oh, there they come. They're trying to peek in the window, but they're having trouble staying. They just make it, and then they go back up. All right, Mr. B's third graders. Do you have another question for us?
We do.
What if your module breaks? What if your module breaks?
What if your what breaks? Sorry?
Module breaks.
What if your module breaks?
There we go.
The habitat breaks, yeah. So we have our scuba gear set up at the time. So if anything were to happen, we would get in the scuba gear, we would swim out toward the surface. But we also have alarms and things that can wake us up at night if there's any kind of sensors that are happening here. we also have people at the top side that keep monitoring us. So we have cameras that are not in our bedrooms, but cameras in the main area that we watch to make sure we stay safe. And we can call anybody anytime we need. So there is always a risk that you know, at any point something catastrophic could happen and you would lose the habitat. But we have a lot of people keeping us safe and a lot of people watching the habitat so we can hopefully keep it going for a long, long time. So it's a great question.
All right. Thank you for the question. Okay. A few more from online. I do want to give a shout out to ISA online students from Aruba are joining us right now. That's really cool. So I hope they're enjoying the underwater hangout and maybe they can get into the water and do some snorkeling today too after school. That'd be pretty cool. Okay, let's see. Whose question have we left off so far? Oh, okay. So this is someone from Mrs. Dennison's class, and they're wondering about how the pressure is able to be kept underwater. How are you able to keep that pressure in the modules?
So they're actually pumping atmosphere, pumping air in. And that pump is keeping us balanced with that moon pool area. So we always are bleeding a little bit of bubbles because we always have this positive pressure that's being kept in. So if that were to stop, we'd have some amount of time that the air would contain here, but we wouldn't get circulation. So that would be bad as well. So it's honestly, it's what I majored in. It's physics. It's basic physics. It's Boyle's law and all those great things that maybe you guys are starting to learn in school, but it's basic physics.
Yeah. I keep getting distracted because there's someone out there is just trying so hard to get down there, but they almost make it and then they have to go back up. But good on them for trying. They're not giving up, and that's an important lesson: is don't give up. Okay, let's see. Ms. Hawkino's crew would like to know humidity. Is it humid down there?
Yeah, so we have kind of similar, like an air conditioning unit. Oh, did you see it? They made it. They hit on the window.
Got a wave.
Yeah, I think just that the windows are 4 inches thick.
Okay.
For the pressure. Yeah. So the air conditioning, yes. So it can be a little bit humid. We have like equivalent air conditioning units that are trying to pull some of that humidity out. But because we always have the moon pool exposure, one of the big things is to get dry. So you don't want your skin wet under here. So one of the first things you do is you go and you take a quick shower, you just rinse the salt water off, and then you really do try to stay dry. And that's very similar to a lot of other research facilities and other environments where you're wet. Your skin does need some amount of time during the day to stay dry. It's really important. So,
all right, let's get one more in here. Ava would like to know, what's the best part of working for NASA?
Oh, the people. The people are the best part. You know, what's really fun about Johnson Space Flight Center is we are the only place we do mission control for the astronauts right now on the space station. And we do the training there as well. And so people that I work with, whether it's astronauts or engineers or scientists or anyone really, you know, a lot of them love what they do and they went to school for it and they're passionate about it, but most of them lived somewhere else in the world and had to come to Houston. So it's like a community in itself of all these people that have come together and grew up in their town. So if you're, you know, I was the kid in this Florida town that had an Apollo biography under my arm with my other books. And I was walking around and everybody knew when I signed my yearbook, Adele was going to go work for NASA. That's what she was going to do. And I was like the only one in my class that was just, you know, I mean, from my memory, right? There could have been other kids, but from my memory that I was like, I'm going to go work for NASA. And so you get to NASA and all these kids are the same way. They're the ones that have been like, I'm going to go work for NASA from their, you know, neighborhood or their small school or wherever they were. And so you just have this love of working together. And it's very similar to marine biology or, you know, at any kind of pick any field. You get to meet people that love the same thing you do. And that's very much a big part of what makes it fun.
All right. Very cool. Well, I'm going to start off with a huge shout out to our YouTube classrooms. Thank you so much for being so active in the chat, sending in so many great questions. A shout out to our camera classrooms. A few had to duck out for their recesses, but there's still a couple back there. So let me bring them in for a big wave. Our cold water 6-7 third graders. Oh, I saw someone say something maybe in the corner. Very cool. Thank you so much for being with us, camera crew. Miss Hawkino's crew in New Jersey. I know you were supposed to be there with us, but looks like you got in there on YouTube, so I'm glad that worked out. Adele, it is always so great to steal some of your time, whether on land or beneath the ocean. That's always cool too. And I know you're planning some dives now that you're done with interaction, so I hope you have some great dives out there.
Thank you so much, Joe. And it was so great to meet everybody. You guys had great questions today. Thank you.
All right. Awesome. Well, thanks, everybody. Have an awesome weekend, and we are going to sign off for today. See you, everyone.